To turn the wick up a little bit here now. South Africa's top athlete Wade van Niekerk's victory at the recent Rio Olympics was a bone of contention for black and coloured South Africans, if there is such a thing. While some coloured people saw this as a victory for them, some in the black community felt Wade's victory was one for black and coloured people inclusively. I felt it was a victory for everybody in South Africa. Some people even took to social media alleging that in post-apartheid South Africa, it still feels as if the country is only represented from two perspectives, either black or white, and anyone else basically, well, they don't exist. Now, to unpack the so-called colour debate, I'm joined by social commentator, Dr. Leonard Martin, and then Anthony Philip Williams, chairperson of the Indigenous First Nation Advocacy South Africa. Very good morning to you, gentlemen. Thank you for being here.
Good morning, Evan, and good morning to the viewers.
And then in the far corner, Elvis Preslin is with us just to give us his 5 cents.
Yes, I'll be in the peanut gallery and chatting to you guys. But, and of course, there is a very important question that we want to pose, because we want to take that question on Wade van Niekerk. And,
I want to talk about this. Let's look at the Wade van Niekerk debate. Some suggesting, well, some on social media have been very strong about that when there are negative connotations, then we are coloured, because that's what I am. But when there are positives, such as the world record broken at the Olympics by Wade van Niekerk, then they are black or South African. Gentlemen, let's start there. What do you say to that?
Well, I think this provides an opportunity to South Africa to begin lifting the veil on assumptions and stereotypes. South Africa should welcome the achievements of Wade van Niekerk. First of all, in his own right, but also in terms of the community that he comes from, that he has actually come so far. But it also provides us with an opportunity to look deeper at the reactions and responses. Wade van Niekerk actually provided his community with the space of a positive symbol, which is sorely lacking in these communities that he comes from. But at the same time, it has opened the discourse and debate for us to clarify how these stereotypes afflict South Africa and what lies at the bottom of these stereotypes. Now, I think we have to say from the outset that the notion of coloured and the notion of black both emerge from a deep colonial history where images matter, and the question is, who has shaped these images? Secondly, what do these images mean within real social political time? Because we can dismiss something, but let us look at the root causes as to why they in fact live within our cultures.
I think if I could just come in there, Dr. Martin, we should debunk the whole race identity issue. I think this
is label, you mean?
Labeling at least, you know. I think this is it's a mess. It's startling, it's shocking that a democratic dispensation would, you know, perpetuate something that is a bureaucratic invention of the past. It doesn't. It's just nonsensical.
It was an apartheid
absolutely.
Invention.
And what we have done is we have endorsed it.
And it was designed to divide people.
And we are perpetuating that. So if you talk about Wade van Niekerk and you talk about the coloured identity, which we reject outrightly, you know, but we don't want to. You've got to reject something, and then you've got to explain. You've got to let people know there's a whole insight, a whole program of education and conscientizing that needs to happen. That is missing. But we cannot advance and support, you know, the narrow stereotypes of coloured. We're not black. We were not black enough now. We were not white enough. We cannot keep on advancing those kind of stereotypes. It's just not going to help us. But Wade's outstanding and exceptional response, you know, within his discipline is given all of us, you know, an opportunity to have an honest discussion.
Yes. That's the key. Elvis,
now,
you have a point.
Now, the point is very important here, because that honest discussion that you're talking about is what we are asking the question this morning, and that is about race labeling. Is there still such a thing, Dr. Martin, and should we take away this apartheid slave mentality?
Well, I think, you know, a democratic South Africa, and we have to say it, as you say, honestly, has mistakenly reinscribed the race idea within our constitution. It's a very difficult thing to actually admit, but we have, in fact, reinscribed the notion of race in our constitution. We have to start there and have a discussion. But let us come to the issue of the concept colored. What our people don't know is that this term has a global history. It has its roots in the Indo-European conquests that started in India and was followed up by European conquests, Western European conquests of Africa. And within that context, terms were created to enslave, first of all, those whose lands were conquered, but also to create stereotypes to sustain a new social and political structure that was created, starting in India and coming to Africa, particularly South Africa. That is where we locate the term colored. But the term colored veils the whole notion of location of people who were enslaved, what happened to their land. And as we know, slaves are not meant to have memories. Slaves are not meant to have genealogies. And this is what has happened to what has now become the colored population in South Africa. The state that arose actually endorsed the actual cultural, political, and economic enslavement of a people. And that is the location for the social and political trauma and contradiction that we find in our country.
That genealogy that Dr. Martin is talking about, Mr. Williams, Dr. Seth Cooper earlier mentioned that 90% of the population worldwide has got a Khoisan gene. As the indigenous first, what do you say to that? Does that come as a surprise?
You see, absolutely not, because there is empirical evidence that that we are the givers of life, you know, so to speak, as it were. And there is enough. Genetics does not lie. It's found that so many people out in Australia, across the world, Europeans have got more Khoisan genes within them. So you see, it's something that's very interesting. It's if you take the Wade van Niekerk and you juxtapose that to the Correctional Services 7 case just the other day, that where you see where there's the contradictions within South Africa. On the one side, South Africa ululates. There is an excitement. Wade van Niekerk has broken the record. And Wade van Niekerk now is a South African. He belongs to all of us. And we agree with that sentiment. That's the Wade van Niekerk belongs to all of us. We've got to break the stereotypes. But it is also interesting and sad all at the same time that the same government that celebrates the excellence of Wade van Niekerk is the same government that take 7 colored correctional services officers to court because they are supposedly oversubscribed in a particular given geographical area. These are serious contradictions. You cannot. How do you justify? You know this. It's what I said. It is reprisal versus praise. How do you justify this?
It's obvious that we say the term coloured is a problem. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Am I rightly?
It's both a scientific problem and a cultural problem.
A scientific and a cultural problem. Then what is next?
But it's not just the colour term that is problematic. We don't believe that there is people called black. We don't believe there's black people. It is these are exactly, these are, in fact, it's contradictory terms. It's got no place in such in a democratic environment. We've got to do something, all of us equally have to have this discourse so that we can debunk all of these colonial labels
and
that we've been put on.
We have to understand that we are African, both genetically and culturally.
Absolutely. I mean, let me just come back to the question of white European identity. The first people in Europe were called the Grimaldians. And the Grimaldians were the Khoisan people from Africa. So before you have a white Europe, you actually have the Khoisan in Europe. I mean, all this can be scientifically proven today and is being written about with all the artifacts and research that's being done. So the notion of white, you know, has to be interrogated as well. As we are discussing the issue of black and colored, the notion of white should not be privileged.
Yeah.
I mean, from a scientific point of view, the color white reflects color. So in real scientific terms, if we look at black and white, the real colors really are white people. If we look at it scientifically, if we come to the ideological direction, colored people in South Africa are descendants of the first people in Africa, which are the Khoisan, you know. Now, what colonialism has done, it has saddled us with false notions of race. It has saddled us with false notions of division, which sustain a hierarchy of who is at the top and who is at the bottom.
Yeah.
So we need to unpack this in order to fight racism effectively, because all these false notions have actually been sustained to create relations that divide people.
How do we untangle and demystify all these race labels, Mr. Williams?
I think what's important is perhaps one should talk about what could be termed conceptual cleansing. You know, I think it's an important process.
Are you talking about slaughtering? Or what are you?
Conceptual cleansing. Does that mean we start again?
You see, that's exactly what we need to do, because it's exactly the same issue with the rainbow notion. You know, it's been a deception, you know, to even suggest that people, that this is a rainbow nation. A nation was really, it was a good intention from the Archbishop, but really, in essence, in real term, it's intangible objective. You're simply saying that you're asking for something that you are never going to achieve.
Within the concept then of social cohesion, how is this attainable? Is it another CODESA? Is it another TRC? I'm talking within the social cohesion concept.
Yeah. I think it's very important to understand that in order to achieve social cohesion, it cannot be achieved and sustained on a false basis. Here we have social structures that have been given a certain life based on ideological false notions of who people are. You have false social categories, you know, social constructs. These identities have been constructed to serve certain social and economic and political purposes. In order to have that CODESA that will deal with the social, I mean the conceptual cleansing, we need to have a dialogue in our society. If we say we are genuinely opposed to racism and racialism, we must go to the core of the etymology. What are the roots of these words? For example, there is a great alienation in our society where colored people feel they are no longer part of this democracy. We are playing with fire to pretend that it is not deep, you know. Secondly, we have notions of racial authenticity. Whites feel that they are racially authentic, but it's also imposed on others.
Yes, but I also feel that they are victimized in South Africa today. There's a lack of opportunity for them, and there's what they call, if you read social media, reverse apartheid being practiced on them. So all of these things we have to come to terms with.
Absolutely, and I mean, if you have to diagnose any disease, racialism is a deep disease in our social political fabric. And for the next generations, the responsibility of our leaders in this generation is to clear the ground in order for a healthy humanity to take place, to actually redesign, reconfigure our social space in order for that equality, but also human self-respect to begin to grow again. At the moment, we are not having that.
You see,
Can I ask you, as the chairperson of the Indigenous First Nation Advocacy South Africa grouping, to give us your final remarks on this discussion?
you see, for us, it's important that we go back to the drawing board. But the drawing board has got to do with the foundation. You cannot build, there's nobody that builds anything on the surface. Because if you build it on the surface, you have what you currently have.
Yeah.
You begin to see how the cracks are coming up, and this country is beginning to disintegrate. The foundation of it all is to come back and identify and have an honest discussion. Who are these people called colored? Why are they called Busman in different pockets and corners? Yeah. Let's have that discussion. Why were they called? Why even amongst themselves do they call themselves Bushi? Something tells us there is something missing. And until we have that honest discussion, and that's got to do with the foundation and the fabric of society, of this country, until you dig in there, you can forget about it.
Final words.
Well, I think we need to go back and demystify. We have a situation in our history where South Africa still has a lingering understanding that this country, modern South Africa, has had white founding fathers. We've never had white founding fathers.
Yes.
The founding population of this country has been the Khoi and San population. We need to go back and fill the gap, because the Khoi and San population have been written out of South Africa's history. And then you supplant that history with the notion of colored to break off, to de-link these people from their African history.
Absolutely.
We have to go back and lay the foundation for a healing. That first and foremost, a liberated South Africa must re-establish itself on its African roots. And this is not contentious, because it is the given history of this continent that if we do not remove the colonial premises for our identities, we're heading for serious conflict, as has happened elsewhere. We cannot build a modern, non-racial, democratic South Africa on colonial foundations. We have to begin clearing up that space in order for self-respect and humanity to be re-established.
Elvis, I see you nodding there in agreement. What do you say on this? You've got your 15 seconds to...
I can't agree more with the good doctor. This labeling, this notion that there is black people and colored people should be gone. But the interesting thing that I take from this conversation is that white people, you are the real coloreds.
Elvis. Of course, our question of the day today, deals exactly with this issue. Apartheid race labels is what we're asking you. There it is. Are South Africans still trapped in apartheid race labels? And is that causing us all the hurt? And are we trying to build this on top of a colonial past, which Dr. Martin says is where all the problems begin? It's not a scenario of this country or this continent was built when colonials arrived. What happened long before?